Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food. I'm your host, Clifford Lee Sargent. How are you all doing? Great to see you as always. Let's talk about a film. Get that coffee. Bronson is one of my favorite comedies. I think it's also my favorite prison film. That might actually be down by law. I'll have to think about that. Bronson is a 2009 dramatic prison comedy directed by the Danish director Nicolas Refn, who did Drive and the Neon Demon, as well as Pusher, which I haven't seen, and he also did Valhalla Rising with Mads Mikkelsen. Tom Hardy, in the role of a lifetime, plays the extremely violent, yet charming and somehow endearing Charles Bronson, based on the real-life inmate, Britain's most violent prisoner. A man who resembles and was, at one point, I've read, a circus strongman and has spent 44 years in prison and close to 40 of those years in solitary confinement. God damn. Who wouldn't go insane? Of course, Charles Bronson isn't his real name, which is Michael Peterson. Charles Bronson is the actor from Death Wish. It was given to Michael Peterson as a fighting name by his promoter when he was bare-knuckle boxing. This is the story of Charlie's life and rise to fame. Hardy actually spent a lot of time speaking with Bronson, the real guy. They kind of developed this friendship. It's cool to hear him talk about it. The film is told in a very iconic style of voiceover and montage, with Bronson staring at the camera and telling you his story, much like this. Or on this theatrical stage performing as this minimalist one-man show to a seemingly fictitious audience which could represent, the public or the outside world. We follow Bronson from prison to prison as he grows increasingly famous. And then as he gets out, starts fighting in the bare-knuckle boxing matches, then goes back in, takes some hostages, and then starts this inner artistic journey of self-discovery while taking hostages. Yeah. We discover his hopes and dreams, loves and hates, passions and failures. Somewhere in all of it, we can't help but empathize. You have a sense, by the end of it, that his violence is depersonalized. Or maybe the violence is really towards himself. He's battling himself. He's not really battling anybody in particular. It's almost activity for a pent-up body, a workout, right? Like a way to vent. In the film, it almost seems more of an outlet for physical frustration than malice. The real Charles Bronson, in fact, wrote a book called Solitary Fitness, a workout book when all you've got to work with is a prison cell. I should read that. Refn's cinematic signatures are present, the colored neon lights, the stylized slow motion with the 80s new wave soundtracks. But honestly, watch the film for Hardy's performance. It's one of the best I've seen. I mean, he really just went for it. I mean, nobody says fuck off like Tom Hardy and Bronson. It's amazing. Fuck off! An interesting note about the colors, though. I think it's in part because Refn is colorblind, which is why the colors are so garish. They're very intense so he can tell the difference. And this has informed his visual aesthetic. Bronson is a great example of working with constraints in filmmaking. Less is more. On a budget of only $230,000. That's crazy. Over the years, the real Bronson has been responsible for something like over a dozen hostage situations. And in the film, he does take several hostages. One, a prison librarian, and another time, his art school teacher. Though he doesn't hurt either of them, physically, really. Kind of puts them through some sort of psychological torture, but doesn't beat them up. So Charlie's presenting the story of his life to an audience in a theater, telling them how it was dressing up as multiple characters, berating them, laughing with them. But who is Charlie's audience is what we're wondering. Is it all in his mind? What's it all for? What does he want? A prison warden in the film explicitly asks him this, and that's just it. He doesn't even really know anymore. Not really. Who is Charlie Bronson? Is it a war with society? Or a war with himself that he's fighting? And, the film suggests, the film suggests both because of the forced solitary confinement. I mean, it's really kind of inhuman. And this is where some of the more disturbing parts of the film lie, in the depiction of his total solitary confinement. But prison is a platform for Charlie. That's what it is. It's a stage, right? It's a theater. Prison is a theater for him. A place where soon every native was gonna know my name. To my knowledge, Charles Bronson has never killed anyone. He's just really violent. These days, Bronson has since, I think 2014, changed his name to Charles Salvador, after Salvador Dali, adopting a calmer, artistic, and non-violent lifestyle. So I want to tell you about my favorite scene. Matt King plays a guy Charlie meets in prison who holds boxing matches. He's like a single glove wearing 80s dandy. He is just so bizarre and slithery and just completely weird. The chemistry between these two when they first meet creates one of the most bizarre on-screen encounters I've ever seen. He's like this effete smoking ringleader of some sort of illegal racket, but you don't know what it is. The real Bronson said he loved Tom Hardy's performance, that he thought it was more him than himself, but he thought that this character was a bit of a ponce. But I mean, but it works so well for the film. It just works. It's so much more interesting. The real Bronson loved Tom Hardy's performance so much, he shaved off his mustache for Hardy to use as a prop in the film. So that, I'm guessing, is actually sort of Charles Bronson on screen. That's where the metamorphosis took place. That's how Tom Hardy got his performance, because of Charlie Bronson's secret mustache. Refn and Hardy did not get along, apparently, according to Hardy in an interview that I read online. But they'd both work together again. And Refn said that he told Hardy on the phone that, down the road after a while, they needed to do a film about Aleister Crowley. Could you feature Kenneth Anger as an aged Crowley, perhaps? And then you would have Tom Hardy playing the younger version? Do they look similar enough? Would that work? So the first thing was Tom Hardy's performance. That's the number one thing that makes the film. The second thing is the soundtrack. Refn employs dramatic classical for comedic effect. Verdi, Wagner, Puccini, the Flower Duet. Terrific. Cutting and timing the violence just enough to get the laughs in there, which is the real strength of the film. You're laughing just as much as you're cringing. And there's this tension that's keeping you like, like this nervous laughter. Then you have the 80s New Wave edition. You have New Order, Pet Shop Boys, as well as a newer band of that genre from my stomping grounds, actually, Glass Candy, who provides the film's theme, which is a digital versicolor. And all of it blends together to make one very enjoyably strange experience. The top-rated comment on the digital versicolor YouTube page, the theme song in the film, is, after you've seen Bronson, this surprisingly becomes a killer workout song. In fact, years ago, after watching this for the first time, a friend of mine may have bruised my ribs. And of course, finally, relating to the soundtrack, I need to mention the beginning, which is actually a much more disturbing tone than the rest of the film. And this is largely in part to the very first piece of music we hear, being none other than the greatest of the great, the very unfortunately recently deceased American expat ex-pop superstar turned Jacques Brel covering moody and complex, monolithic experimental music icon, Scott Walker. It's actually the Walker Brothers, his original group. I once knew this guy back from Portland, Oregon named Pete Swanson, who was in a band called Yellow Swans, and then he went solo. He's an experimental artist. And I would see him from time to time, and I think he was the one who told me about Scott Walker. He was the one who told me to listen to Tilt, I think, and that's where it all kind of started. And he said that he was introduced to Scott Walker by a couple of guys at a record store or something. They made him go into a pitch black room, put on some headphones, and played him, I think, Frankie Teardrop from the first Suicide album, or the whole album, and then Tilt by Scott Walker. And he was, I don't think he was ever the same. You'll come out a changed man after that experience. That's a pretty sinister thing to do. So who should watch it? Lovers of dark, violent, cynical comedies, prison films. If you enjoyed Refn's other work, of course. I haven't seen Pusher, but I did see Drive and The Neon Demon and Valhalla Rising. I didn't care for Drive. I didn't really care for Valhalla Rising. Neon Demon was pretty good. It was okay. I kind of like Neon Demon. If you like Gaspar Noé and Alejandro Jodorowsky, those who admire method acting, I mean, again, Tom Hardy completely steals the show. It's just you're watching the film for his performance. But yeah, anyone who enjoys British crime dramas or action films, Jason Statham, you know, Naked by Mike Leigh, Guy Ritchie, Snatch, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Sexy Beast. I haven't seen that one actually, but that kind of thing. But I feel that if you're into more intellectual comedies, you might dig this one as well, just because of the odd, unique tone. So if you're into stuff like Withnail and I with Richard E. Grant, I'd give this one a shot. Better than food. Time for the coffee lottery. And whoever's name I pull out is sent either a month subscription to the new streaming Criterion channel or a book of their choice, plus a bag of coffee roasted by yours truly. Best of luck to all those who have supported the show. Really appreciate it. Come on in. Hey, Hector. Thank you very much, Hector. Really appreciate it. I'll get in touch and see what you prefer. Take care of yourselves. Great to see you as always. Have a good night, and I'll talk to you soon. Ciao.